Disclaimer. This book may contain content that is considered historically inaccurate or culturally insensitive by modern standards. My hope is that by exploring old literature, we will better understand why people of the past thought the way that they did and understand the influences that shape their culture. This video is not intended for young audiences. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm excited to read you from Out of Door Book, which is the 7th book in a series or collection of books called The Children's Hour, which was published by Houghton Mifflin Co. in 1907. And I will be reading to you our first whale by Charles Nordhoff. The vessel was now headed for the coast of Africa, distant from this point of Madagascar about 170 miles. Each day the officers now became more anxious to see whales. It is quite usual with whalemen, at least to meet with whales on their outward passage, and not at all uncommon to take some valuable prizes before reaching the regular cruising grounds. Up to this time, however, we had not yet seen a spout, except that of an occasional blackfish or finback, and had not succeeded in capturing even a porpoise. We were now 3 months out, and had not yet on board oil enough to keep a lamp alight in the forecastle, a sad prospect for men to whom oil is the representative of dollars, and blubber of the native ore. $5, said the captain one morning, as the men repaired to the mastheads, to the man that raises a sperm whale spout. I'll put 3 pounds of tobacco on that, spoke up the mate. And I a bunch of cigars, said the second mate. This set everyone agog, and after breakfast the rigging and mastheads were crowded with men, eager to win the promised reward. But it was not on that day, nor the next, that we were to fall in with the objects of our search. Not till we had been 2 weeks upon the ground did we see a spout of any kind. Then one forenoon a shrill, discordant scream of "There she blows!" from the foremasthead proclaimed that somebody thought himself entitled to the promised reward. All hands rushed upon deck, and the captain and mate were halfway to the royal masthead ere the repetition, although in a very moderate tone, of the first cry assured them that there was in reality a spout seen. Casting his eyes in the direction indicated by the masthead man, the mate exclaimed at once, with a disappointed growl, "It's a finback, you leatherhead! There's no prize offered for such." "I told him so," grumbled the boat steerer, who stood at the main masthead, "but he would not believe anything I said, thinking I wanted to claim the prize for myself." 2 days thereafter, as the mate stepped into the rigging at daybreak to take a preliminary survey, he shouted in the utmost excitement, "There blows! There blows! By the great horn-spoon, boys! A whole school just under our lee bow!" All hands were upon deck in a moment, and the greater part of the crew at once jumped into the rigging, anxious to see at last a veritable sperm whale spout, and half prepared, from the mate's excited manner, to see the whales themselves close aboard. About 2 miles and a half off, on our lee bow, a small school of what the captain, examining them with a good telescope, declared to be large whales, lay disporting themselves on the waves, now lazily rolling fin up and lob-tailing, now making the white water fly, as they threw their vast bodies clear of their native element. Sail was immediately made upon the ship, and then, while the masthead men, with the captain, kept up the musical cry of "There blows!" varied occasionally by such ejaculations as "There is white water!" "There he lobtails!" "There he breaches!" We hurriedly prepared the boats for the day's work before us. Tubs were placed, and lines bent on, iron sheaths taken off, and a last wetting given to the irons, boats' gripes cast adrift, and oars loosened and laid in their proper places, water kegs filled, boat sails unlashed, and all the various minutiae duly attended to, which experience has proven necessary for such occasions. All was life and bustle, and the stagnant pools of our blood were once more enlivened by a little real excitement. "There goes Flukes!" from the masthead proclaimed the close of the first scene of the day's drama, and immediately thereafter, "Breakfast, all of you!" from the cook caused each man to rush hurriedly to the galley for his quota of hot slop. Coffee it is called by courtesy, but no one who had ever drunk mocha, java, or rio would own it to be such. Hastily washing down a couple of biscuits with his preparation, we were ready for the word to man the boats, and were at the side as soon as the captain showed his head above the gangway. "Stand by to lower away, you shipkeepers," was the word now, and we prepared to follow the boats down as they were lowered, ready to leap into them as soon as they should strike the water. In attempting this feat, one of the second mate's crew mistook the distance and fell into the water, from which he was fished up, sputtering and shivering, receiving from the captain the consolatory advice to never mind that, as it was all clean water down there. It was a beautiful morning. There was just enough of breeze to make the sails of more use than the oars, and sufficient sea to admit of an easy approach to a whale. The glorious sunrise, such a scene as is to be witnessed only in the tropics, the balmy air, and the unwonted excitement all united to put us in excellent spirits, and many a joke was exchanged on prospective mishaps, as we put up our boat sails and set out for the scene of action. The position which each of the 4 boats was to take had been previously arranged, and as the whales had not appeared to be in motion when first seen, it was supposed that they would rise not far from the place where they had gone down. Accordingly, when we judged ourselves within about a quarter of a mile of this spot, we hove to our boat, preferring to remain at that distance to windward, as it would be easy enough to sail down, but more difficult to pull up, did we fall to leeward. The other boats were shortly hove to likewise, and now we lay in silence, awaiting the reappearance of our prey. Every eye and ear was on the alert, ready to catch the slightest motion or sound, for none could tell how soon the school would make their appearance at the surface. I thought I heard a spout," said the boat steerer in a whisper. In his eagerness he had gotten upon the bow chalk, anxiously peering over the waves as the boat was lifted upon the swell. A moment's silent listening convinced him that it was nothing but a sea break, and we again strained our eyes for the expected sight. "There blows! I told you I would see him first," said the mate joyfully, as he pointed to a thin, bushy spray just melting out of sight. "There blows again!" cried the boat steerer, adding in a somewhat mortified tone, "I was looking another way, or I should have seen it first." "There, and there, and there blows! There are 7 or 8 big whales. I can see them now from my place," continued Bernard, the boat steerer, whom I was yet holding up on the bow chalk, the dancing motion of the boat making it impossible for him to maintain that position unsupported. "Sit down now, and we'll sail slowly down toward them. I want to see in what direction they are going to stand." We were nearest to the fish, and it was evident that no other boat but ours could approach them favorably. "Pull a little," said the mate. We shot her rapidly ahead with the oars for a few strokes, and then peaked them again, the boat making good headway under her sail alone. We could now hear them spout, and when a heavy swell would come rolling home, would fancy we could hear their huge bodies burrowing through the water. It was a time of intense excitement. "We'll have to stand across a little in order to get up behind them," said the mate, it being impossible to approach a sperm whale unperceived from the side. After making a little detour, we again stood toward the school, and the mate singled out one huge fellow nearest us, and happily the largest of the school, as our prize. Each individual of the crew had received from the mate, on first lowering, some final instructions as to his special duties, in case we should get fast, and we now sat stock still in the boat, oars firmly grasped and ready for instantaneous use, and scarce breathing from excitement. We were fast overtaking his whale ship. Now the hoarse bellow, as he ejected the water from his spout holes, grew louder, and looking over my shoulder as the boat was lifted on a mighty swell, I saw the huge form of Leviathan stupidly rolling in the waves. "Stand up, you sir!" the mate whispers to the boat steerer, a needless command, as that worthy has not yet sat down, and now stands with iron poised in hand, and knee resting firmly on the lubber chalk, ready for action. "Pull a little starboard!" The boat is laid round to get a fairer chance. Now she rises on a wave, and the fish seems almost under us, and now, "Give it to him, you sir!" And the other one, a heavy stroke of his flukes, which drenched us which drenched us with spray, and the instantaneous whiz of the line through the chalk told us that we were fast. Hurrah! Shouted the glad boat steerer. What line? What line? Don't you see it smoking in the chalk? Flake after flake of the line rushed overboard with a rapidity almost beyond conception. One tub was already empty, and half the other was gone before a little slacking in the speed of its exit gave us to understand that the whale had gone his length and was now probably returning to the surface, an operation which would take out line nearly as fast as the first sounding, were it not that it is held back by several turns about the loggerhead in the stern. The mate had meantime taken his place in the bow, and the lances were out, and lying in their rests when the whale reappeared on the surface some ship lengths ahead, leaping nearly his entire length out of the water, and falling back with a report like distant thunder, and a splash which for the moment threatened to fill the boat. All in slack line, boys! Let's get up to him! There he lies, quite still! Take your oars and pull up! But the weight of the line hanging overboard rendered it impossible to manage her, and we were compelled to get this in first. By this time the whale was slowly forging ahead, evidently scarcely knowing what course of action would be most politic under the circumstances. Now haul up! Having gotten a strain on the line, we pulled the boat on, but just as we got within dart, the whale again sounded. Not deep, however, and when he reappeared, the rest of the school were with him, and they were going off at the rate of several miles per hour, of course taking us with them. Now, however, we hauled the boat up, and the mate sent a lance quivering into his flesh, but not into a fatal part, as we could not get far enough in advance of our fish to afford a fair chance. With a splash of his flukes, the whale sounded again, and commenced running under water, a proceeding which was kept up during the whole of a chase, which lasted from this time, about 8:30, till after 4 o'clock, when occurred the catastrophe which wound up our day's sport. The whales, there were 7 in all, ran to the leeward, that is to say, in a direction parallel to that of the wind, contrary to their usual practice in such cases, which is to start at once right in the teeth of the breeze. While their present course made it much easier for the boats to follow, and perhaps catch up with us, it much increased the difficulty of our approach, for the purpose of lancing, as in such cases much care is requisite, else would the boat be dashed upon the whale by the billows which bore her onward. We had, however, lanced but twice, both times ineffectually, when the fish increased their speed to 7 or 8 miles per hour, and as they ran almost continually under water, it was altogether impossible to reach our whale with the lance, even had we been able to get the boat sufficiently near to him. On we swept, the other boats, with sails and oars, pulling might and main to catch up with us, and the ship, with every rag of canvas set, bringing up the rear. Whenever there seemed a possibility of reaching the whale, the boat was hauled up, and a lance duly hurled at him, but with little effect, as his small was the part most generally hit, and each wound seemed only to add to his speed. This was soon such that, the breeze having to some degree failed, we were fast dropping ship and boats in the distance. At 1 o'clock, by the sun, we ate our dinner, consisting of a biscuit and a pint of water per man, vowing internally, and taking our empty stomachs to witness, never again to get into a whaleboat without previously filling our pockets with provisions. At 2 we saw the last of the boats, and shortly afterward the royals of our ship faded away in the dim distance, leaving us quite alone with our huge friends, who were still going along at the same rapid pace, and puffing away like so many Mississippi steamers. On we were borne, seemingly as though never to stop. Now the school would slack a little in their speed, and we would haul up to lance. Then they would start up again, and for half an hour at a time we would sit still, singing songs or devising plans whereby we might circumvent our wary enemy. Be jabbers, it is much better to sit here idle than to be sweating at the oars, as the other boys are doing, said an Irish Yankee who pulled the tub oar. And begorra, it's our first whale anyhow. Let them talk as they will. Oh, here is an illustration. It says, he placed his lance fairly and sent it home. Here it is. I'm moving it closer to the screen so you can get a closer look. Let them talk as they will. It's not our whale till we kill him, Patty. "They don't count whales till they are tried out and stowed down," remarked the mate. "If that's the case," was the answer, "it's time we were getting a nearer view of him than we've had yet." The mate evidently thought so too, worried with waiting for a favorable opportunity. About 4 o'clock it was determined to make a desperate effort, running every risk for the sake of getting a dart at the whale's life. "Pull the boat up," said the mate, with an air which showed that something was to be done. "Now, Charlie," to the present writer, "hang on to the line, and don't slack till I give the word. Take it out of the chalk, and let her shoot ahead by the bow cleat. Lay the boat round to the boat steerer. This maneuver gave us a better chance, and a lance was sent quivering into his body. A stroke of his flukes on the water just ahead of us was the quick reply. "Hold on tight! Don't drop her an inch astern!" cried the mate, as the whale came to almost a dead stop. "Now I'll get a set on you," he muttered between his clenched teeth, as the boat shot up against his broad side. He placed his lance fairly, and sent it home, with the whole weight of his body. As it touched his life, the whale dashed down head first, and the motion striking his flukes against the boat's bottom, and breaking 2 or 3 planks. No sooner had he felt her, however, than turning with lightning speed, he returned to the surface head foremost, open-mouthed, striking and thrusting with his long, slender jaw, as though it were a sword. One blow from this jaw stove in the whole bow of the boat, and she filled and turned over almost before we could leap into the water. To grasp oars and whatever else would float was the first act of each. On finding himself overboard, the mate in a few minutes succeeded in gaining the bottom of the wrecked boat, and with his assistance the rest gathered there, each keeping in his hand an oar to assist him when, as frequently occurred, a sea larger than usual swept us from our narrow perch. The first glance about us disclosed to us our antagonist, lying at the distance of a short oar's length from the boat, side and side with us. He was spouting thin blood, and the disagreeable thought suggested itself at once to several of us. Suppose he goes into his flurry while we are lying here helpless. "We must hope for the best, boys, and meantime look out for the boats and the sharks," was the mate's answer to this suggestion. "But if he goes off in a flurry, you need none of you expect to see your mammas again." When we had hoisted a shirt upon a lance-pole as a signal of distress, and lashed 3 oars across the boat to keep her from continually rolling over barrel fashion, we found ourselves at the end of our resources, and had leisure to look our fate in the face. It is needless to describe how anxiously we watched each motion of the whale, how the color of his spouts was critically discussed, and every spasmodic twitch on his flukes was thought portentous of evil. Suffice it to say that, fortunately for us, the mate's lance had not touched him in any very vulnerable spot, and that after lying for half an hour side by side with the boat, and for another half hour in such a position that with every swell of our boat's sharp stern rubbed against his side, just as the sun sank below the horizon, he turned flukes, and to our great relief, came up at a distance from us of some half-dozen ships' lengths. It should have been before mentioned that from the moment when our boat was stove, all the other whales who had till then borne us company disappeared, and we saw them no more. Scarcely had our whale risen to the surface when we descried a boat sail at but a short distance off. It was fast growing dark, as there is scarcely any twilight in those latitudes, so that it was with no ordinary joy we hailed the approach of what proved to be the captain's boat. "Are you all there?" he asked, as he came within hail. "Yes, sir." "Well, just hang on there till I kill your whale," was the cool rejoinder, saying which, he turned the boat toward the fish. She had scarcely gotten within 2 boats' lengths of him when, snapping its jaws together with a sharp report, which showed that his ire was fully roused, the whale made for the boat. "Stern all! Backwater for your lives!" cried the captain, slipping the sheet, and, fortunately, just in time to escape the angry rush of the whale, who glided beneath the surface, and rose again at a short distance astern. The boat was laid round, and a few strokes of the oars brought her again within his reach, when he repeated his former action, and it was only by the most strenuous exertion that the crew succeeded in backing out of his track. This time, however, the boat steerer had managed to plant an iron in him, and a shout announced that he was not given up yet. But a groan of disappointment succeeded the shout, as the line, suddenly slackening, announced that the iron had drawn, and the whale was loose, going off with 2 irons and 2 tubs of line fast to him, and spouting blood at that. It was now quite dark, and we were not sorry to be taken off our rock into the captain's boat. Meantime, the other 2 boats in the ship had neared us, and after half an hour's pulling, we arrived on board, where a good supper for a whale ship awaited us. "Well, Patty," said the mate next morning, as we were washing down the decks, "what will you take for your share of our first whale?" And that is the end of our first whale by Charles Nordhoff. And I will show you the illustration again in case you wanted to get a better look at that. And I really hope that you enjoyed the story and that you are having a great day. Bye!